Hollywood spent the 80s burying neo-noir thrillers that were dark, twisted, and dangerous for mainstream audiences to handle. Studios panicked when test screenings went sideways, shelved finished films for years, and prayed these gloriously unhinged crime stories would disappear forever. These 8 cult classics refused to die, surviving as hidden gems that prove sometimes the best films are the ones Hollywood desperately wanted you to forget. Trouble in Mind should have launched Alan Rudolph into mainstream Hollywood, but instead he created a neo-noir so deliberately weird that studios had absolutely no idea what to do with it. Set in a rain-drenched Seattle, reimagined as the retro-futuristic Rain City, ex-cop Hawk returns from an 8-year prison stretch for vigilante killing to find his former lover Wanda running a cafe, while young couple Coop and Georgia stumble into the criminal empire of flamboyant mob boss Hilly Blue, with Coop getting seduced by the underworld while Hawk becomes Georgia's reluctant protector in a city where everyone's drowning in broken dreams and moral compromise. Divine stepped out of drag for only the second time in his entire career to play Hilly Blue, personally collaborating with Rudolph on the character's Sydney Greenstreet-inspired tuxedo look that transformed him from camp icon into legitimately menacing gangster. Chris Christopherson accidentally shattered his hand, throwing a real punch at Keith Carradine during a fight scene, shutting down the entire production for 10 days, while doctors fought off infection and the insurance company threatened to pull their coverage. The production design became so convincing that they built Wanda's Cafe in Seattle's Belltown neighborhood, and locals kept trying to walk in, thinking it was a real diner, leading the crew to eventually just let it become an actual restaurant after filming wrapped because turning people away was causing more chaos than keeping the charade going. Marianne Faithfull didn't just contribute the haunting title track, but her bluesy narration weaves throughout the entire film, adding this dreamlike quality that mixed 1940s noir aesthetics with 1980s punk sensibilities in ways that left test audiences genuinely confused about what decade they were watching. Keith Carradine's costumes become progressively more flamboyant as Coop descends deeper into crime, with the wardrobe department intentionally mirroring his psychological breakdown through increasingly outrageous styling that made him look like a new wave music video reject by the film's climactic mansion shootout. Street Smart became Morgan Freeman's explosive breakthrough performance, and Christopher Reeve nearly bankrupted himself trying to make it happen. The plot follows desperate magazine writer Jonathan Fisher, who fabricates a sensational pimp profile to save his failing career, only to have Freeman's terrifyingly authentic Fast Black become the prime suspect in a real murder investigation that traps Fisher between journalistic ethics and street violence when the lies spiral completely out of control. Reeve didn't just star in the film, he actually produced and partially self-financed it, because he was so desperate to prove he could handle serious dramatic material beyond the cape and tights that defined his career. Freeman's performance was so explosively powerful that critics immediately started throwing around Brando comparisons, earning him his first Oscar nomination and genuinely launching his Hollywood trajectory. But here's the thing nobody talks about. The film sat on a shelf gathering dust for almost 2 years because studios were terrified it wouldn't find an audience, and Reeve had to personally campaign for its release. The movie sparked legitimate public debate in New York about journalism ethics and the relationship between reality and reporting, with actual media panels forming to discuss whether Fisher's fictional creation constituted professional misconduct or creative license. The production shot in real New York locations during one of the city's most violent periods, with the cast and crew constantly navigating actual street conflicts that made the on-screen tension feel uncomfortably authentic. Freeman's method approach to Fast Black was so intense that other actors admitted feeling genuinely intimidated during their scenes together, creating this palpable danger that test audiences couldn't look away from even when they wanted to. Cohen and Tate turned a straightforward kidnapping thriller into something far more psychologically brutal, and director Eric Red knew exactly what he was doing. Young Travis gets snatched from Oklahoma after his family gets executed by aging professional Cohen and volatile psychopath Tate, who are driving him to Houston for their mafia bosses, while the kid desperately tries manipulating their mutual hatred to survive the increasingly violent power struggle between his captors. Red drew heavy inspiration from action-heavy French crime films to create this relentless momentum where there's literally nowhere to hide and no relief from the tension mounting inside that car. But production shot entirely on location across genuinely bleak Texas highways and Houston outskirts to maximize the atmosphere of desolate isolation, with child actor Harley Cross later recounting in interviews how Red carefully constructed a tense but psychologically safe set environment despite the disturbing material. Roy Scheider brought his method-style professionalism to supporting young Cross through the intense scenes, creating this weird contrast where the on-screen terror was paired with off-screen mentorship that actually enhanced the film's underlying sense of dread. Parent groups absolutely lost their minds over the cold execution scenes and extended child terrorization, accusing Red of exploiting violence against minors for entertainment value. Hemdale Film Corporation requested scene trims after disastrous test screenings, where audiences walked out in disgust. Though despite persistent collector rumors about deleted footage showing even darker material, no major lost scenes have ever surfaced. The film found its cult audience through late-night cable and urban video stores, where true crime enthusiasts discovered this genuinely unsettling examination of professional violence colliding with childhood innocence in ways that still feel transgressive decades later. Mona Lisa earned Bob Hoskins the Best Actor prize at Cannes, and the journey to create Neil Jordan's gritty London noir nearly collapsed under the weight of shooting in actual King's Cross vice districts during their most dangerous period. Hoskins plays George, a recently released ex-con who becomes driver for high-class call girl Simone, played by Kathy Tyson in her breakthrough role. As they navigate the violent underworld of 1980 Soho and King's Cross, searching for Simone's missing friend, while George slowly transforms from working-class muscle into something resembling a romantic hero. Jordan wrote the entire script in just 9 days, somehow combining his background in fantasy storytelling with this brutally realistic portrayal of London's sex trade that critics later compared to documentary-level authenticity. Tyson worked extensively with sex worker support organizations to bring genuine depth to Simone, rather than falling into typical Hollywood prostitute stereotypes, while Hoskins later cited this performance as the absolute turning point in his career trajectory. Michael Caine took a supporting role as gangster Mortwell specifically to shake up his established image, having been impressed by Jordan's earlier experimental films and wanting to work with a director willing to take creative risks. The production team shot extensively on location in genuinely dangerous Soho and King's Cross neighborhoods during actual after-hours periods, capturing real street scenes with working prostitutes and criminals who had no idea they were being filmed for a major motion picture. Jordan's willingness to blur fiction and reality created this uncomfortable authenticity that made audiences squirm while simultaneously drawing praise from film critics who appreciated the unflinching portrayal of London's hidden underbelly, proving that sometimes the most troubled productions emerge when filmmakers refuse to sanitize ugly truths for mainstream comfort. Crimes of Passion represents Ken Russell at his most deliberately provocative, and Kathleen Turner's star vehicle became career suicide wrapped in transgressive art. Turner plays Joanna Crane, a conservative fashion designer who moonlights as China Blue, a daring Los Angeles prostitute whose double life attracts the dangerous obsession of Anthony Perkins' sexually repressed street preacher, wielding a metallic vibrator he calls Superman, while a married electronics manager gets drawn into her world of theatrical sexuality and psychological danger. Russell actively courted controversy by fusing melodrama, thriller elements, and camp eroticism in ways designed to make censors lose their minds, with Perkins and Russell collaborating on improvisations that reportedly left the crew simultaneously thrilled and genuinely unsettled by what they were creating. The production design featured garish neons and surreal sets paying homage to Hitchcock and mid-century pulp aesthetics, while the studio released two completely different versions, an unrated cut showcasing Russell's full vision and a heavily butchered R-rated version that sparked massive debates among fans and censorship advocates. Reverend Donald Wildman orchestrated a boycott campaign generating over 12,000 complaint letters and church protests across 19 states, with tabloid columnists dubbing Russell America's pornographer, while conservative political candidates used the film as evidence of Hollywood's moral decay during their election campaigns. The moral panic backfired spectacularly when midnight screenings transformed Turner's China Blue into a countercultural icon embraced by artists, drag performers, and leather club devotees who celebrated the film's transgressive sexuality as liberation rather than exploitation. The controversy created this weird cultural moment where the film simultaneously represented everything wrong with 1980s Hollywood excess and everything right about artistic freedom, challenging conservative morality, proving that sometimes the most hated movies become the most influential cult classics. The Bedroom Window hides one of the messiest casting gambles of the decade, with Steve Guttenberg's awkward transformation from comedy star to serious suspense lead somehow actually working. Guttenberg plays ambitious executive Terry Lambert, who witnesses an assault through his window during an affair with his boss's wife Sylvia, played by Isabel Huppert, then claims he saw the attack himself to protect her reputation, only to watch his fabricated testimony spiral into deadly consequences when the real attacker starts systematically eliminating everyone involved in the case. Director Curtis Hanson deliberately cast Guttenberg against type after his comedy success, employing a chilly visual palette and encouraging Huppert to bring her intense European acting methodology to create this uncomfortable tonal clash between Guttenberg's American everyman persona and Huppert's severe psychological intensity. The production drew heavy inspiration from Hitchcockian thrillers like Rear Window, with Hanson adapting Anne Holden's novel with greater emphasis on ambiguity and unreliable narration that kept audiences guessing about who was manipulating whom. The film's clever camera setups and tightly framed interiors became legendary among cinematography students studying suspense techniques, while Guttenberg later credited Hanson's exacting directorial approach for extracting his best dramatic performance on screen. The movie found unexpected cult status through Baltimore's late-night television broadcasts and local video stores, where college radio stations started hosting window nights paired with true crime documentaries exploring the film's themes of witness testimony and romantic obsession. This production anticipated the erotic thriller boom of the late 1980s and early 1990s, while remaining more psychologically complex than the genre copycats that followed, proving that sometimes casting against type creates exactly the tension a thriller needs. Blood Simple nearly imploded during production, when the Coen Brothers' perfectionist vision for their debut feature collided with their complete lack of money and industry connections. The plot follows jealous Texas bar owner Marty hiring sleazy detective Visser to murder his cheating wife Abby and her lover Ray, only to have Visser double-cross everyone by killing Marty instead, and leaving Ray to discover the body while mistakenly believing Abby committed the murder, triggering this cascade of paranoid misunderstandings and violence. The Coens famously shot a completely fake trailer using borrowed equipment and actor Bruce Campbell to pitch potential investors, essentially creating cinema's first crowdfunding campaign that's now standard practice among indie filmmakers. Cinematographer Barry Sonnenfeld designed the signature Snorricam, specifically for this film's POV shots, while inventing cheap DIY equipment to achieve unusual visual effects on their shoestring budget, with Frances McDormand making her film debut in a performance that would eventually lead to her marriage to Joel Coen. Emmett Walsh was the only actor the Coens ever envisioned for Detective Visser, actively campaigning to secure his casting after being inspired by his menacing persona in Straight Time, creating this sweaty reptilian villain that became the template for decades of neo-noir antagonists. The studio requested some edits for pacing and violence levels during post-production, though persistent rumors about radically different international cuts are largely exaggerated, with most versions differing only in minor scene trims rather than substantial content changes. The Coens' creative disagreements during production actually enhanced the film's paranoid tension, with their arguments about camera placement and editing rhythm creating this deliberately disorienting visual style that became their signature aesthetic approach for their entire career, proving that sometimes friction creates exactly the atmosphere a neo-noir needs. Masquerade became a mathematical disaster when Rob Lowe's career-defining sex tape scandal collided with this Newport murder mystery during active production, and the chaos somehow made the film better. Meg Tilly plays vulnerable heiress Olivia Lawrence, who falls for charming yachtsman Tim Whalen during Newport's regatta season, only to discover she's being manipulated by ruthless socialite Ann Briscoe and a deadly conspiracy targeting her massive inheritance, while everyone's true motives remain hidden behind wealthy New England facades. Filming in the Hamptons provided both logistical nightmares from unpredictable weather and these lush backdrops that perfectly captured upscale atmospheric visuals, while Lowe's ongoing media scandal caused massive distribution delays and forced the studio to completely restructure their advertising approach to avoid association with his tabloid infamy. The set design intentionally referenced old money prep school aesthetics years before the talented Mr. Ripley adaptation made that visual language mainstream, crafting this cold, elegant atmosphere where wealth becomes its own form of psychological violence. Director Bob Swaim shot multiple endings and selected the finale based on test audience responses and the film's underlying gothic undertones, creating debate among cult enthusiasts about whether the theatrical cut represents the strongest possible conclusion. Meg Tilly prepared for her role by studying actual New England high society dynamics, bringing this subtle vulnerability to her performance that made Olivia's transformation from naive heiress to survivor feel genuinely earned rather than plot-driven. The chilly atmosphere between Tilly and Kim Cattrall was partly genuine tension from playing adversarial roles, with their off-screen distance actually enhancing their on-screen psychological warfare. Critics initially dismissed the film as disposable thriller trash, but late-night cable broadcasts and Northeast video stores embraced this slick production as modern gothic noir, with local bars hosting masquerade nights, while film students in Providence championed its wicked examination of New England's dark underbelly, hidden beneath yacht club respectability.